Welcome to another episode of the podcast. Dr. Thomas Hemingway here. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss out. All right, so we have a very amazing special guest who is just so brilliant, so bright, and just a true light in the world of wellness. And she's a double board certified physician. I think she has a similar upbringing, maybe to myself in sort of the Western medicine world, but has really been able to incorporate both Western and sort of more, I would say, natural-minded wellness, get to the root of disease at the same time. She's a mom of 2 kids. She's incredible. She's written the best-selling book, I'm So Effing Tired. She's got an amazing just wealth of knowledge. So Dr. Amy Shah is here with us today. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh my gosh, the pleasure is mine, as they say, and ours. We're just so excited. I would love it if you just chatted a little bit about what it looked like for you with your training and then transitioning to the medicine you do today, which is more wellness focused, and kind of how all that came about. Was it something that happened in your personal health life, or like how did that work out for you? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Such a great question. Somebody said that they complimented me and said that I love how you blend the two. And I never even thought of it that way, because in my mind, I'm Western trained, very traditional training. When I was training, I really rejected my South Asian roots, like Ayurveda, like things like turmeric and ginger and all these things that I grew up with. I just rejected it because when we were in medical school, it kind of was considered like these kind of were outdated and, not really supported by science. And so I went through, this Western training, and I did everything I thought I would supposed to do to become successful. And to be honest, I jumped through the hoops and I was successful from the outside. In the medical world, I had achieved a certain status. I had passed my boards. I had become an owner in my practice, and everything looked great. But on the inside, I felt like trash. I felt like a loser. I felt like if this is what success is, like this is not success to me, because I felt like my mood was unstable. I was always stressed or cranky or angry. And I didn't feel like I was doing the work that I wanted to do because I wasn't able to incorporate nutrition. There was just no time. And my body, because I had 2 kids and I was past the postpartum period, I really didn't feel like I didn't feel strong, and I didn't feel like I wanted to look and feel this way for the rest of my life. And whenever I approached my primary care, because I thought maybe I'm just not catching something that's wrong, and I approached my primary care, and she said, "Oh, you're just a mom. You're a busy doctor. You're getting older." And I just knew that that wasn't the answer to all my problems. And that's how I started on my journey. And as I started to kind of pull myself out of this dark place, what I realized was anxiety not stopping me from having a good night's sleep. And it was cortisol that was stopping me from getting the body that I wanted. It was my gut health that was really affecting my mind. As soon as I started to understand the science behind this and how to fix it, I started to share it because I thought that this was an important part of science that we don't talk about. And that's when I reintroduce Eastern medicine thinking that is a lot of what nutrition is today, is, incorporating mind, body, the world, nature, people around you, and food as solutions for your problems. So that's kind of how I got here. And then I thought I would write a book when I retired, but lo and behold, the internet began, and I started to share my journey on the internet. And long story short, here I am after I've just written my 2nd book, and I'm waiting to announce that soon because that's going to be coming out in the new year.
Wow. That's amazing. Wow. And it's what a blessing to have done this, not at the end of your career, but now, because you can make this huge difference in so many lives sharing this in the here and now in your own personal journey, as well as your studies and all of the work that you're doing with people around the world, both in person in the clinic, as well as, through all the virtual environments that you're able to help people. I mean, what a blessing. I reached that a little bit later than you possibly. I did 2 years in the hospital and the ERs and clinics, 20 years, I should say. And then the last couple of years, I really had to refocus, because when I was in medical school, maybe like you, I actually took a class called alternative medicine, right? That's what they called it in the 90s. I was in the medical school in the 90s, and it was called alternative medicine. And out of a 200-person medical school class, there were 10 of us in this class. So that's just, nowadays, I'm sure it would be much more populated. There would be many more in that class, but it was a different world back then. And what a blessing to have come to this. And now you can share it, because you're getting to the root cause of most of the illnesses out there, which are preventable. And you're sharing this not only from your technical expertise and your knowledge, but from your personal experience, which is so powerful. So tell us a little bit about, I know you're fasting guru, right? Your Instagram is Fasting MD. You love fasting. I love fasting. I've always loved it, to be honest, but I never really knew what I was doing as a kid. Like, we grew up doing a version of intermittent fasting, right? The time restricted feeding, because we ate dinner at 5:00. And didn't eat breakfast until 7 or 7:30. So 14 hours, boom, we were doing it. And we had no idea that it was even a thing. What's going on now? I mean, the data shows that we eat 16 plus hours a day, at least here in America. Like, what's happening?
I love that you mentioned that, because people think that because I'm fasting MD, I must want people to do some crazy fasting or, 24, 36, 48 hours, which, if you want to do that, great, but that's like running a marathon. You don't necessarily have to run a marathon to be in good shape, right? So I think that your type of time restricted eating is exactly what I'm recommending to people, because even in my upbringing, and a lot of the people, not only me, but my parents, and in their religion, they kind of believed, so my parents are Jain by religion, and that's kind of like it's almost like an offshoot of Hinduism, but it's more like Buddhism, where you believe like you're in nonviolence and being one with the environment. And there was a strict rule, basically, for religious reasons more than anything, but a strict rule not to eat after sundown. And everybody, when I was growing up, ate before sundown. It wasn't until, modern American times, where they're working 2 jobs and, studying at night, that things changed. And, it's no doubt to me that the new research that's finding that time restricted eating is a healthy practice, study after study after study is proving it to be true. And it's really, think about it, just like our brain needs sleep, our gut bacteria and our digestion needs time to reset and renew. Also, we can't be eating at all hours of the night. We never had access to microwaves and Uber Eats at midnight, even 100 years ago. And so I think seems really weird to people to eat early dinner now, but that's actually how our bodies are programmed to function. And we have plenty of research to back that up. In fact, a new study just came out 2 days ago that actually experimentally took 2 groups of people, and they sleep deprived one group. They shifted their circadian rhythm, so they were like a night shift worker, and took 4 days to kind of flip their schedule around. And then 4 days later, that night schedule group started eating in the middle of the night and in darkness and daytime hours, whereas the regular group ate during the daytime hours. And they saw a huge difference. By the end of the study, there was a 26% increase in depression symptoms in the group that was eating nights, and a 16% increase in anxiety symptoms in those who are eating at night. And what it means is our bodies are hardwired to see sun, to eat in the daytime. And then when you try to flip that all around, you run into big problems.
Yeah. Well, I can certainly tell you from personal experience, having worked many night shifts, which I'm sure you have over the years as well, that not only do you feel like crap, I mean, just basic
you do
crap, but it messes with your, not just your energy, like you talk about, but your emotions. It has so many downstream effects. Obviously, it messes with your cortisol, which is your stress hormone that we mostly talk about, which throws that out of whack. Your hunger and satiety hormones, the ghrelin and leptin, get thrown for a loop. And then, we eat not because we're weak or we can't resist, because all of those hyper palatable foods, what I call the food-like substances, just look good, right? Because those bacteria get messed up in our gut. We get dysbiosis and we want to eat those crappy things. It's like the signaling happens. And I think that's the magic now that we can understand this a little bit more, that it's not somebody's, weakness or lack of self-control. It's biology. It's those darn little guys, the microbiota, that are telling us what to do. So can you speak a little bit more about that? Like what's happening down at the gut level? How are they telling us what to eat or what not to eat? How does that work out?
Yeah, they're like little people. They have food preferences. They have personalities. They make dopamine and serotonin, your feel-good hormones, or they can make you sleepy or tired. So they are really, it's almost like they're creating, and it sounds like sci-fi, but they're actually creating our mood and our cravings at any given moment. And it's fascinating because we think that we're a product of our environment. We're sad or happy because our life is sad or happy. But and I know that it's much more than that. It's your mindset, but it's really is your gut brain mindset. So it's what those microbes are thinking and saying to your brain, and it's what your brain is saying to those microbes. Like we know goes both ways. People who are positive thinkers, they were found to have bacteria that was similar to each other. Whereas people who were always negative thinkers, they have a different bacterial profile. So we know that thinking good thoughts can grow some good bacteria. And then the good bacteria that you grow from food or thoughts help you create more good thoughts or cravings for more good foods. And so you'll see, like when you cut down, I don't know if you've had this experience. I know a lot of listeners have had this experience. You might have had a Starbucks addiction at some point, right? And you start to lower that. Like I used to, when I went to Columbia for a fellowship, I would come out of the subway and there was a Starbucks right there. And I would always say to myself, oh, I'll get myself a reward. And I would say it's a reward, but then it ended up being a reward almost every day of the week. And as I started to wean myself off of that, and a few months later, I tried the same drinks that I used to drink when I was in that state. And it didn't taste good anymore. I didn't have that craving or that dopamine rush that I used to get from it. So it's possible, and we all know because we've had those little moments, to retrain your gut bacteria. You can grow a different majority in there to crave different things. And so I think the bacterial part of this is just so fascinating to me because they're really making so much of our decisions. In fact, you can transplant the microbiome from one person to another and change their whole personality. So schizophrenia can be moved from person to person just by moving their gut bacteria and doing nothing else.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing. And certainly, if we're hoping to change or maybe anxiety or depression or things like that way, that would be maybe a quick fix. But the cool thing is that we don't have to do that, right? Fecal transplant, which sounds pretty gross. And I would, it is what it is, right? You're taking the poop of somebody and putting it into somebody else. To just say it in simple terms. And, but the fascinating thing, like you said, is the studies have looked at that, and you can literally change not only sort of the personality, but that can be looked at, and you can blind the investigators, and you can say, okay, which one of these, say, mice that got the bacterial, transplant or the fecal transplant, which one of them, is demonstrating the schizophrenic behaviors and which is not.
Yeah.
And they could tell without even observing the behavior, and it was consistent. Like you just can't make this stuff up. It's like you said, it's like a sci-fi movie, but it really is happening. And so
I know.
So fascinating. When you talk about the circadian rhythm and the fasting, and how do you think, is there mechanistically, has it been shown how exactly that pans out with respect to the gut the microbiota, if you will? How do they respond? Is it the day and light, or is it just the time of eating? Do they respond to both? Like, what does that look like in a mechanistic way?
Yeah, it's so fascinating. People always like, how do these gut bacteria that live in the bowels,
in the dark,
know night and day, and how would they need to sleep? And makes no sense. But really, they have circadian rhythms, and they're very strong. In fact, every living thing, we've now known plants, animals, bacteria, fungi, all have a circadian rhythm because we're all we work on a 24-hour day and night cycle. So these bacteria, they depend on us to tell them what time it is. So they get inputs from our food, they get inputs from the brain, they get inputs, and we think that there's some inputs that we don't even understand yet. So maybe like from the skin, the receptors, so there's many, many ways that it knows what to do when. And it also needs time to do its kind of downtime. So for example, we know like when melatonin is released 2 to 3 hours before bed, it doesn't just go to the brain to get sleepy. It goes to the pancreas to tell the insulin to stop pumping out so much. It tells the rest of the gastrointestinal tract, including the gut bacteria, that, hey, it's going to be time for sleep now. So you can start the repair processes. So it's super important because, as you know, and I equate it to sleep, like it's just as important for us to get adequate sleep as it is to be alert during the day. And so getting that downtime for the bacteria, for the gastrointestinal tract, for our hormones is extremely important.
Yeah, totally. And I'll be honest, I mean, maybe you had the same experience, but when we did, our training throughout medical school, residency, and all those things, I mean, sleep was never talked about as something that was really important, valuable, and powerful. In fact, I often was in that place where we were looked down upon if we got too much sleep, right? We were either lazy or we were missing out of some learning experience because we were asleep. And, it was kind of like an Achilles heel kind of thing. It's like, sleep is for the weak or something. And it's a travesty because sleep, I found it to be, especially now that I'm turning 50 soon, it's where the magic happens. I mean, if you want to wake up refreshed and alive and vital, like you need that good night's sleep. And I ignored it for decades because it wasn't really appreciated. And the cool thing is we now at least know more why we need to sleep, right? The research that came out in, I think it was 2012 or something that was from the University of Rochester, where Dr. Iliff and Mattergaard basically figured out this whole glymphatic system process. And we didn't learn that stuff in medical school. We knew you had to sleep, but we didn't really know why.
And the other, like, people talk about growth hormone, right? For example, human growth hormone. It's our beauty hormone. It's our youth hormone. It's our repair hormone. It's the hormone that gets abused by athletes and bodybuilders because it's also really, really key in muscle repair and growth. And that gets released about an hour after we go to bed. You get your biggest burst of natural growth hormone. And so what we've seen is people who have irregular sleep schedules and sleep schedules that happen extremely late, so past midnight, for example, have smaller peaks in that human growth hormone. And so you're missing out on our free, natural, side effect-free growth hormone. I mean, when you start to learn about growth hormone, you're like, wow, it's so great, but it's not something that's super safe to take by mouth or inject because there's all these other side effects. But when you get your natural burst, in the first big burst is, in about an hour after you sleep, that is the one that repairs your muscles, your brain cells. It goes into your hormonal system. So that's something that we're just like learning the benefits of. And I think if anyone knew, hey, you could miss that big growth hormone spike if you don't go to sleep by a certain time, people would all be in bed right now, Yeah,
I feel like for some reason, I'm not sure why that's not propagated as much as it really could be, because I think that sort of average time frame, when you look at the data, it's like 11 p.m. or something.
Yeah.
And I know personally, at least in the last couple of years, my goal is to be in bed by 10. Doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot more now than ever before because I didn't appreciate that. Yeah. And it's a game changer.
It's so funny because I thought I was so fun, and I would like never go to sleep or something. But I saw a college classmate of mine, and we were talking about this, and she goes, "Oh, you always loved your sleep." And I think because in retrospect, I remember that back then nobody cared about sleep. Everybody was up all night, partying all night. It was college. So, but I remember thinking, no, I need to go to bed because I need to get up and study. We're pre-med or whatever it is. And I was like, oh yeah, I do. It's relative, but back then I thought I wasn't sleeping. But compared to what my classmates were doing, I mean, they were literally staying up all night and sleeping like during the day and waking up like midday. That was kind of like the lifestyle.
How do you do it with how do you teach your kids this? Because I know kids nowadays, they're either communicating with their friends via whatever social media platform or whatever. It's hard to kind of get them sometimes to settle down and go to bed. How do you work with?
I am obsessed with sleep for children, because I believe that I believe in the science of emotional control comes from sleep. Critical thinking is from sleep, and then growth and repair. They play a lot of sports. And so I'm like, if you want to be in the best shape and not get injured, you have to sleep. So a new study just came out a few days ago about cancers are happening earlier in every generation. So people born in the 60s have later cancer rates than people born in the 70s and 80s. And in the 90s, younger and younger people are getting cancer. So every successive generation, we're seeing earlier ages of cancer. Cancer is a misprogramming of our cells. Like, it should not happen at young ages if you're healthy. And so when they were trying to piece out the plausible factors, because, some of it is early detection, from especially in the 1990s and onwards. But even when they controlled for that, the increase could not be explained. And so they talked about processed foods, that's this big deal, obvious. But from the 90s to 2020, there's still been a huge jump, even more than can be explained by just food. And one of the big plausible factors that they're talking about is the lack of sleep in children, like in children and adolescents. The average sleep duration has gone down significantly over the years for that group. And mostly to blame, some of it is to blame as school timings and sports, but a lot of it is social media and access to phones, right? So you're able to be on your phone and you're 12, 13, 14, 15, you may just skimp on your entire night of sleep, or at least the critical hours. So I'm very strict with that because I know what the side effects could be. I'm not saying that there's a direct link between that and early cancer, but that was one of the theories brought up in what is happening differently with our younger generations, especially from 1990 to now, that is really changing their risk of cancer. And one of the things that was brought up was lack of sleep, especially at the younger ages. So one of my rules for my 12-year-old is that she has to keep her phone outside her room. When it's time for bed around 8:00, we charge it either in my room or outside in the main areas, so that there's no temptation to kind of look at it later in the night. And my son is, it's situational, right? My son is very good. Like, it's not even near his bed. It's far away, but I think that you have to guard them from themselves, because I think that we often don't even have the boundaries that we should with our phone. And you can imagine with their, in their age group, it's really tempting. So my phone is somehow iCloud linked to my son's phone, and I see missed calls very late at night from his friends. And it's great to be able to kind of monitor that, but it just shows you that it's a very tricky situation.
It's his, that, it's giving you right there a real-time example of his corollary group, right? His peers, they are up late, just like you're saying. They're on their phones, and it's a real thing. And it's certainly, I would agree with you. It's one of those factors that didn't really come into play 20, 30 years ago. I mean, even the iPhone came out less than 20 years ago. When I was in residency, we didn't even have cell phones. We had the pager, right? We had little pagers. We figured out how to message each other with upside down numbers that would spell words. And it was like archaic when you think about it compared to what is available now, right?
It's so funny. I actually told the story to somebody that the first time I ever thought I was going to get robbed or mugged was when I was in fellowship. Columbia was very progressive. This was after my residency. It was the first year the iPhone was even invented. I think it was 2000. And my son was born that year. So it was 2007. I think it was maybe the first or second year the iPhone had come into play. And they gave all of us an iPhone for work. Like, you could use it. All you had to do is they paid for the plan. And if you wanted any extras at that time, you could, and it was like just an amazing perk. So I'm carrying this phone and I take the baby to Central Park, and, I get on the phone and a group of like big high school kids approach me, and my son's on the swing or whatever. And they said something about like, hey, we're wondering if we can use your phone. Something about, their friend, something about their friend or getting lost or something. Can't even remember the story exactly. And it was the first time I felt like that fear of like, oh my God, this could be really bad. So I just pretended like I was in a rush, and I said, actually, this is a work phone. I'm not allowed to give it out for borrowing. And they kind of huddled together and were like trying to figure out what to do next. And I just kind of picked up the kid and started walking away. The good thing about New York City is like, it's kind of a public open space, and it was during the day. So there was other people around. And so I was trying to play it cool, but I literally like swapped him back in. I was like walking away. And I remember it so clearly because the iPhone at that time, it was like showing a gold watch in a dark subway, Now it's like every single person has an iPhone, like every person on the street, whether you're, advanced, rich, poor, anybody has it. So
if they had one of those iPhones now, nobody would even look twice. They'd be like,
no,
does that thing even work? Like,
nobody would even care. Yeah, exactly.
Well, one of the things that I think you're so eloquent at explaining is, the fasting part, especially between women and men, like the intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding, whatever style that people are doing. I think most are trying this time restricted feeding because it's so simple. But sometimes I think, like with anything, there's the possibility that you might overdo it, right? It's like if a little is good, then more is better. Like, okay, if I can do 12, let's do 14, let's do 16, let's do 18, let's do 20 hours, let's do OMAD. Like, what does that look like especially, is there a difference between women and men? Like, what's been your experience in that regard?
Right. So women are very finely tuned to shut down their hormonal system in times of stress. Think about it, war and famine. You don't want to have babies. You don't want to be procreating. And so our systems are designed to shut off ovulation in the time of extreme stress or famine. And guess what? We mimic that sometimes, the extreme stress and famine. Infertility is a huge issue for primary amenorrhea, is a huge issue for women. Fertility is a big problem with stress and the stress of our emotions or our life. So intermittent fasting, like exercise, is a huge stress on our body. Women athletes know this very well. I mean, they train so hard that they often go months or years without a period. And I think that that's something that they deal with infertility all the time, because the more stress you put on your body, if you don't have a proper recovery, your body will just shut off that ovulation cycle. And I think that that's something that happens with intermittent fasting as well. People, especially when they're on the lower end of the body fat scale, their bodies are finely tuned to say, oh, she's putting a lot of pressure. She's fasting, too long. It's a famine situation. And so we have to be careful. I mean, the studies are not robust at all. In fact, there's very few studies. The only study that showed negative effects was in that it was like in a group of 8 people, and there's an animal study in like rats, but really no good robust data about whether it really affects people in a negative way. But we can presume from those very small studies and mechanistic studies that the goal is not to overstress your body, whether that's exercise or intermittent fasting. And so I tell women, hey, if you're not sure, if you've never done it before, start just with a 12-hour fast. That should be the very beginning of your fasting journey. 7 to 7, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., super simple. And it sounds easy, but it won't be easy if you haven't done it ever. And then
once snack.
Yeah, like I think people don't realize that their wine and their chocolate and the popcorn and what you're eating while you watch Netflix, like that counts. Yeah. And so even if you had dinner at 6, you're snacking till the time you go to bed, that's not a full fast. So 12 hours is going to be a stretch for some people. So for me, 12 hours is where I started, and also where I go back to during my late luteal phase, which people might call PMS stage, because you're very hardwired for stress during that time. And so especially sensitive to it. So I say, hey, it's not bad to be a woman, but I think that you have to understand your hormones and know that it's not like you can just, all of a sudden start fasting 16, 20 hours and see your male colleagues doing it fine. And you're struggling with fatigue and fertility, period issues and weight gain and GI issues. I mean, it can literally throw you for a hormonal loop.
Yeah. Especially, I agree that last week, right before your period it's probably not a good time to start if you've never done this before. And certainly it's a time to back off, kind of relax a little bit about it. Maybe not go for those 14, 16, 18 hours. Just do the overnight circadian thing. Just, try to give yourself a couple hours before you hit the sack, so to speak, without eating, right? And then wake up and maybe just don't eat when you first roll out of bed. Wait an hour, make it simple, make it 12 hours. It's not, super. I think most of us can kind of work up to that pretty easily. But I think recognizing that there is a difference between men and women, as well as especially that time of the month when you're already kind of more stressed than normal, it's really important, just like you said, to kind of don't try to push your body to the extreme. That last week of the luteal phase, not a good idea, not for you, not for those around you, not for really anybody,
Yeah, 100%.
The timing's not best. As far as what do you make of, there's, this thing called metabolic adaptation. So if you fast every single day and you never mix it up, your body starts to kind of go, hey, is this more of a famine time? Do I need to go into this energy conservation mode? So what do you recommend as far as, do you say fast every day, always take a break? How many days a week? What's a good mix of when to do this?
Well, the nice thing for women especially, and this should be for anyone, is that you should cycle the way you fast based on both your internal feedback mechanisms and also your hormones. So for women, a nice way to think about it is that late luteal phase that we talked about, the PMS time. That's a great time to either not fast or do your shortest fasts. Really work on self-care, get lots of nature time and sleep and sunlight, and really don't stress your body out as much as possible during that time. And then, the beginning of your cycle, the follicular phase, the first, 2 weeks, you should go hard on your fasting, on your workouts. I always think of it, I eat like an athlete, train like an athlete. You should feel strong. You should be pushing yourself as much as you want to. And then, so you're always kind of cycling in and out of fasting. And I also say to people, use your internal feedback signals. How is your sleep? How are your hunger and cravings? Are they even? How's your mood? Is it even? So if your mood, your sleep, your hunger and cravings, your energy is just all over the place or just really low, and your cravings are high and you're just feeling like crap, that's a sign you need to back off on the intermittent fasting. For me, and I'm sure for you, because you're very attuned to your body, those signals come. If you're listening, they're there. You're not sleeping well consistently. You're not training well. You feel tired. Your cravings and your mood are just like out of control. That's a sign that something is going wrong. And that could be something else in your life, or it could be your fasting. And so I always say that that's a feedback signal that things are either going very right or very wrong. So use that daily as a feedback to what you should be doing. Like I should never be white knuckling it through a fast. Like it should be slightly uncomfortable, but shouldn't be like, oh my God, I couldn't sleep all night because I was starving, you know?
Yeah, no, you got to be intuitive. I think just listening, like you said, listening to your own body cues. I think that's the beauty of it, is we all have those cues. And if we just pay attention, if we've already kind of got into the groove where we're eating a good diet, we're eating real food, trying to not eat the processed stuff. So we're kind of been there, done that, but now we're focusing on fasting. If we just listen to the cues, I mean, I'll just be honest, I don't do it every single day. I do like an overnight 12-hour basically every day, but I don't do 16 or 18 hours. No way. Like if I wake up on the weekends and my kids want to eat at 8 a.m., I'll eat with the kids. You know, most of the weekdays, I like to postpone that because I find that I'm more alert, more sort of energetic if I postpone the early meal. And I usually don't wake up hungry anyway, but I think mixing it up is really good. And just listening to your body. There's no like perfectly right, wrong. There's, it's just your body will tell you, listen to your body.
Yeah.
What about for kids? Do you find that there's any, like, what's your rationale with just this concept of, say, intermittent fasting, time restricted feeding? Is it okay for kids? Should they do it? Should they not do it? Should they do 12 hours? What is your outlook there?
Yeah. So when kids are growing, you never want to put in a fasting schedule for them that is very strict or rigid, right? But I think that having a general rule that dinner time is your main time to eat dinner, and then the kitchen is closed, is a very reasonable way to do it. I think that 30% of the calories of the day come, after 8 p.m. for most Americans. And these are not good calories, right? Like you're not eating a salad after 8 p.m. And so I find that to be true for kids too. Like the more you let them kind of know that snacking is okay, the habits that they form and the foods that they choose just tend to be really, really bad choices. So I always tell my kids, like, eat your dinner as if there's nothing else available after. And if they're really hungry, then it's a piece of fruit, or, it's a yogurt or something that they can have that's small or healthy. Because I think the biggest habit that I'm trying not to instill into them, and it's super hard, is that the nighttime is when kind of people, their habits go awry. You could be eating healthy all day, and then from 8 to bedtime, you could literally ruin your entire diet. And trying to instill those habits and those bacteria that crave the right things is something that's important.
Yeah. And like I was mentioning earlier on when we were chatting, the funny thing is, when I grew up, my mom actually did that. She literally put a lock on the refrigerator. So after dinner, which was like between 5 and 6, that lock went on and we were done. Like if we didn't eat our dinner, too bad. That was it. We didn't have a choice. So we always did that circadian fast. We didn't even know it, but yet we woke up plenty of energy. We all were healthy. Like there was no issues. And kind of sadly, now that, the 24-hour conveniences are everywhere, that, I have siblings that are morbidly obese, which is like crazy for me to even think about. But it's like we were all super healthy kids and we had this routine, and now that routine changed, and it's really sad. But again, it's simple to sort of turn around. And maybe you can just quickly speak to that, like this whole issue about the gut flora and the microbiota. Like how quickly can you change that? I know, many of us want to kind of optimize our gut health, but realistically speaking, like how quick can that happen if you do the right things, eat the right foods, follow a circadian pattern? Like how quickly can you even attempt to change that?
Yeah, well, that's like saying exercise, right? The benefits of exercise start right away. Same with changing the diet. So there's been studies that show that 3 days of rapidly changing your diet, like completely going from, say, a heavy processed diet to an extremely healthy, whole food based diet, that's been shown in 3 days to start to change your microbiome. However, it's like exercise, like the benefits start, but then they actually build up over time. And you really want to, like, I don't want to promise anybody that in 3 days you'll be a different person, but that's the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty, is that even though like it may have taken years to get to wherever you are, you can actually change the basic sort of metabolic parameters pretty quickly with simple steps, right? Not eating late at night and eating whole food, avoiding what I call the evil triad, right? The processed grains, the glutens, and the sugars, the processed sugars, and then the seed oils, like those three things. And then you just add all the good stuff, the real whole foods. And the timing, I don't know what your feeling is, but my feeling is that the timing of our meals or the timing of when we eat is almost as important as what we're eating. I mean, you got to do both. But do you feel like it's just as powerful?
I 100% think that circadian rhythms in general, like we're just finding out now how important circadian rhythms really are. And that's when you wake up, how much light you're getting in the day, how much darkness you're getting at night, when you're timing your food. That is such an important part of our health. It's like easy, like low hanging fruit that we are not taking advantage of. I just shared, on my social media about a study about nighttime light. So if you sleep with the ambient light in your room to mimic, say, people just keep their TV on, for example, or they keep a light on in their bathroom or whatever it is. You, in one night of doing that, you are impairing your glucose metabolism. You are, your heart rate rises. And we even know in studies, another study that showed that obesity risk increases when you have ambient light. I mean, these are like simple things we can be doing, like keeping it dark or wearing a face mask. And then the second study that came out was about circadian eating. When, you eat in the middle of the night or you eat late at night, you are more at risk for mental health and physical health diseases.
Yeah. And what's interesting about that is there's this whole issue of the postprandial kind of hypoglycemia that's not necessarily as measurable as you or I might be able to go, hey, your blood sugar dropped to 50 and whatever, and it's technically hypoglycemia. But if somebody eats the wrong things, especially all those late night snacks, which are usually very much carb, heavy, then our body naturally has this sense an hour or two later, like, hey, the blood sugar is dipping from this big high. And now it's like, maybe that's giving you the crappy sleep. You're waking up, you're like, your body's going, hey, that last sugar rush is over. Now maybe you need to snack again. So it's this cycle that can be broken easily with avoiding those highly processed foods and the carbs at night. And I mean, I'm not opposed to having something, especially for the kids, if they really feel like they need something. But like you said, if you offer them something more healthy, like yogurt or some handful of nuts. I love nuts. We have macadamia nuts here in Hawaii that we just hand out, and those are amazing and full of healthy fat. I'm curious, do you make your own yogurt, or have you adopted the super gut solution where you make your own homemade yogurt, or how do you approach that part?
I don't. I do make some. I do have my mom has made some Indian pickled vegetables, fermented. And I'm a busy mom. Like I'm busy. I'm in my practice, and I'm really into fitness. And I have a wellness practice and have products and books. So for me, I haven't really dived into the whole homemaking process yet. And I think that that's something that I definitely want to do more of. But that's in the future.
Yeah. And there's no judgment. I was just curious more than anything, because I actually tried this, Lactobacillus reuteri yogurt, recipe. And I made it a couple of times. The kids were like, "Ooh, this is weird." And I was the only one that would eat it. They wouldn't really touch it. They tried it. They're like, "Dad, this is kind of weird." And
okay. That's good to know. I want to try it. So I want to know so you didn't love it?
They didn't really like it. I mean, it's a little strong. I fermented it for nearly 48 hours. And most people don't know this, but the average yogurt you buy at the store ferments for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
So the bacterial content is pretty low.
Yeah.
So it's so important, like you just mentioned, to get these other probiotic sources like the vegetables that are fermented, whether it be kimchi in Hawaii or sauerkraut or the pickled vegetables that your mom's making, these kinds of things. There's so many options. I had no idea that every culture of the world has these things.
Every culture. Every culture of the world has some form of fasting. Every culture in the world has some form of probiotic foods. It's just like the wisdom of the ancient sages it's just infinite. Like we're finding out now, like they stopped in India, they stopped doing probiotic pickles. And then they just did refrigerated pickles because once refrigerators were around, they didn't need to ferment it, right? But now I'm like, no, we have to go back to those fermented ways, like because in every culture they figured out a way to preserve things that didn't require refrigeration.
Yeah, no, that was the original, right? It was kind of to keep it, edible was to ferment, right? That was the original couple. That was the reason. They carried the milk across in the camel, whatever the canteens, whatever they called them, and they naturally formed the fermented yogurt. That that was just a way to keep it to not spoil.
Yeah, exactly.
So Dr. Shah, tell us any parting thoughts, and then how we can reach out to you, how we can take advantage of your programs, your amazing book, all that good stuff.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm at amymdwellness.com on internet. I'm at fastingmd on Instagram. I have a book called I'm So Effing Tired. I have a new book coming out in 2023 that I will be announcing soon. I have a product called the Chai Latte, which is a sugar-free, dairy-free chai with tea with spices, unprocessed. And then I have lots of new fun program newsletters, free stuff on my blog and website. So I would love to see anybody there and answer any questions that anybody has. And it was such a pleasure to speak with you. I know we talked over social media, but it's been awesome to get to know you.
Yeah, what a pleasure. I hope everybody's following Fasting MD on Instagram, and it's amymdwellness.com. I'll put that in the show notes. And she's been so humble here, but she is such a powerhouse with respect to her, knowledge, her experience. And she literally will look at the stuff that you guys write her. Like she has an email that she looks at. She loves to hear your stories and successes. You're amazing, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do. You're crushing it. You're changing the world. So just keep it up.
Oh, I love this. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, awesome. Aloha, as we say in Hawaii.
Yes, aloha. Take care. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss out on any future episode. And I'd love to hear your comments and feedback. If there's any topic you'd love to hear about, you're dying to know, burning questions, please comment below and let me know what future topics are of interest to you.